Besides, I had a series of nightmares. In one, we were at a burial ceremony, but I couldn't quite understand who they buried in that dream. The fact that the burial was in Onisha worried me even more than the day before. I know virtually nothing about Onisha tradition, but the dress code of the men and women matched the descriptions and pictures Eddie often showed me each time he talked about him and the Ozo title. I stayed home and revised some notes, though I lacked total concentration. Around 10 o'clock that morning, Eddie called me with a shout of joy. He said his father had shown signs of life a few minutes ago. He coughed a few times and opened his eyes. I quickly called in the doctors to come and witness what was happening. Though his eyes were open, Eddie said he didn't seem to see any of us. At that point, Eddie continued, I started calling him every sweet name I knew, including his other title names, hoping he would respond, but nothing happened apart from a few drops of tears rolling down his eyes. At that juncture, I became confused and worried at the same time. It reminded me of the day my grandmother passed away. She had been sick for quite some time, but on that fateful morning, she asked my mother to help her have a bath. After that, she asked for her breakfast and sat up to eat heartily. She cracked jokes while eating and complimented my mother for the tasty fried eggs. She even talked about the onions and the type of tomatoes used to make the fried egg. A few minutes after eating that breakfast, she sat back in the cushioned chair, rested her head backwards, and passed away before we could realize what was happening. As I got carried away by that negative thought, my phone rang again. There was a deadly silence at the other end when I picked it. Speak to me, baby, I shouted. Is anything the matter? There was silence, and a soft, deep voice said, Baby, Papa is gone. The story of David and his sick son has always fascinated me. I wept bitterly, especially for not being able to see him alive. I had hoped to pray for him, expecting God to heal him for my sake. I wished I was there with Eddie to help him hold his peace and persuade him to act like David, who, while his son was sick, covered himself in sackcloth and went on a hunger strike as he prayed for God to heal the boy. But when the chips were finally down and the boy eventually died, he stood up, had his bath, and demanded his food. David's servants were perplexed at his reaction. They had expected an outburst of anger from David since the boy's sickness had weighed him down all those days. David explained later that as long as there was hope, he kept those lights of hope alive, expecting God would have mercy and favor him. The moment the light went off on the boy, he had no choice but to accept the permissive will of God and his undisputable final verdict. I picked up my phone and called Eddie. He had sobbed so much that you could notice it from his voice. I could also hear his mother and siblings crying in the background. I told him the exhilarating story of King David and recounted the unthinkable things and actions he took to save his father from this untimely death. Now that God's permissive will has prevailed, we have no choice but to pick up our bits and pieces, lick our wounds, and move on to achieve whatever Papa has left undone. Baby, he said. The medical team from Lagos arrived a few minutes after Papa gave up. I tried to curse the doctor to re-examine him, but to no avail. Confirmed my fears that those oxygen masks, the gas cylinder, were like pouring holy water on rocks. They were not getting oxygen to the alveoli at the end of air passageways in the lungs. That was where it could have been helpful to the vital organs. Papa died of respiratory failure, which makes me mad because these selfish doctors could have admitted right from day one that they didn't have the needed equipment to handle his case. It's over now, baby. The damage to Papa is irreversible already, and it is beyond repair. We may argue this from Onisha to Jericho, but the only thing sure here is that he's gone. No one can restore him to us. That is the core of the matter, baby, Eddie muttered. The doctors kill people in this country out of carelessness, and no one does anything to challenge them. They even treat our relatives like we are all ignorant of elementary medical knowledge. How will they learn if we continue to shy away from dragging them to court? I knew he was making a vital point here. But given the pain and situation, it would not be wise to start litigation, which by common sense would require calling for an autopsy and lengthy court proceedings. Besides, Eddie said, most prominent hospitals in Nigeria will always bribe their way through if dragged to court. In Onitsha especially, it's commonly believed that most top doctors, judges, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and politicians presumably belong to various secret cults, and they easily patronize each other to subvert the law. With all these obstacles on our way, I plead with you, my love, my Eddie Best, to take 2 steps backwards and allow Papa to rest in peace. The doctors erred in discharging their professional duties, but they can only work with what they have. Eddie told me that the hospital had already reserved a particular room for him in the intensive care unit in anticipation of his arrival. What do we say to the doctor and the ambulance from Lagos? Just imagine the embarrassment, or should I call it the disappointment? It is well, baby, I responded. Man proposes, but only God disposes. Let us turn a new page and forge ahead positively. Let the unknown insects that beat us at night be commonly called a mosquito. After all, I asked to speak with his mom and siblings to express my sincere condolences. Eddie returned to Lagos 3 days later. Only after his return did he explain to me the reason behind the long wait to get a date for the burial. It surprised me when the following day after the father's death, he told me the family will meet next month to choose a date for the burial. Ordinarily, a non-titled Onitsha indigene must get a date from Imobi Inner Palace for any funeral. That is to avoid a conflict of dates between families of other deceased persons awaiting a burial. The other title elevates one from the status of a commoner to that of an aristocrat, making him a member of an exclusive club, the Adaeze society. In Eddie's father's case, the elders had to reach elaborate agreements before presenting the matter to the Imobi. The personal approval of the Obi of Onitsha is also a requirement because Eddie's father was not just an ordinary Ozo title holder, but also the secretary of Adaeze and husband to the deputy president of Ndiodo women. According to belief, once one gets buried the traditional way, he is also expected to get a second burial, enabling the deceased soul to safely return to the spirit world. These burial rites are a substantial financial burden that the family must bear, irrespective of their present financial constraints, or they will become a laughingstock in Onitsha. Because of the financial burden these wasteful funeral ceremonies were causing to indigents, the duration of the interment rites, which used to run over several days, was reduced to just 1 day. All the traditional ceremonies are compressed and accomplished from dawn to dusk. As he explained these details, I observed him telling them with bitterness. I persuaded him to leave the monologue and face the new dawn with strength and focus. Eddie Best, I called out. Where there is a will, there is a way. If you hold on to this adage, no mountain will stand in your way. Having arrived home at that point, I went into the kitchen and made the best dinner money could buy. With the bit of change I had left, I mixed some warm water and he agreed to have his bath. Considering our financial situation then, Eddie needed a miracle to achieve everything listed as the funeral rites. The next few days, we witnessed a series of condolence visits from friends and well-wishers from all walks of life. Some called to sympathize with him over the phone, while others asked for directions to our house. His phone remained busy for the rest of the evening. I didn't know that Onitsha people had many social clubs and 8th grade unions here in Lagos. Representatives of his 8th grade, the Udogadi 8th grade, came to visit with the first purse and picked a date on which they would pay a general condolence visit to prepare for the burial ceremony when they fixed a date for the funeral. There were also women's groups known as Ikporo Onitsha, which had different branches in a central body in Lagos. Someone to whom Eddie opened up and introduced me as his wife blamed him for not registering me with the Isolo branch of the Ikporo Onitsha. Eddie explained that I'm still a student and cannot afford to mingle with women old enough to be my mother. One of the ladies seemed struck by a laughing jackass syndrome. When she finally stopped laughing, she called Eddie by his full name and said, "Do you mean to say we are old cargo compared to your teenage wife? Are you not ashamed that you of all people, our age mates, rock this tender short morning and night without condoms?" "Students, my foot," she uttered. "Who is fooling who, Oga Eddie?" Eddie looked at me and we smiled with our eyes at how people talk with authority and certainty over things they do not know. The woman even got angry, as if to say Eddie was taking her for a ride. Monday was a typical school day for me, as Eddie seemed to have fully recovered from losing his father. I arrived at school earlier than I had in the past week. One of my friends jokingly told me I looked better today. What do you mean? I questioned. Be serious, Adaeze. Last Thursday, you looked like you saw a ghost on your way to school. And a day before that, you were dozing off and on between lessons. On my way to the restroom, I ran into the principal and she invited me to see her in her office during break time. I got lost in my thoughts over the reason for this invitation. Could the secret of my marriage to Eddie have leaked? How would I now admit that Eddie was my husband and not my uncle? As we have claimed and maintained so far, every possible answer kept my mind miserable, distracted till the bell rang to proclaim the break time. I rushed to the principal's office, but she was busy with 2 other students. I waited anxiously for my turn, though more convinced that it might be related to school matters. They finally ushered me in and she asked me to sit down. How about your uncle? He's fine, ma, though he lost his father a few days ago. Oh, really? Sorry for losing your grandfather. It's a necessary end that must come, and it will. I hope the burial is not coming up anytime soon, as it's the tradition in Igbo land. I pray it doesn't affect your concentration during the upcoming promotion exams, she said with a pinch of compassion. I struggled to hold my peace as I realized that I almost gave away our secret by saying that Eddie had lost his father instead of saying I had lost my grandfather. Now, back to the reason I invited you to this meeting. One of your teachers submitted your name as a potential candidate to represent our school in the upcoming competition at the state level. You were named the best IT student, and I just wanted to find out if you are willing and prepared to face the challenge. I responded in the affirmative, as if I was so sure of myself. Your teacher made me understand that your uncle was very helpful in kickstarting your computer literacy. We will need to stage an in-house competition to simulate what to expect in the competition. Due to the nature and seriousness of this competition, extraordinary preparations are necessary. To that effect, I intend to invite a few IT experts to coach our participants because we don't just go to participate but to win. Are you with me? Yes, ma. I will prepare a letter to inform your uncle about the event and the need for you to spend an extra 2 hours with the IT coaches for revision after school. That will be 3 times a week, starting next week. Is that okay with you? Yes, ma. The janitor will deliver a letter to your uncle before dismissal today. You may now go and join your friends at the canteen. Thanks for your time. Thank you, my special mentor and principal. I feel honored to represent this excellent institution, and I promise to make you proud, ma. I can't explain how I got to this point, but I know that apart from God and my efforts, Eddie was the next person on my list of mentors. I ran home after dismissal with a letter to Eddie in my hands, as if I was going to deliver an invitation to the White House. Eddie was surprised when I told him what had happened at school that day. First, I almost cried when the principal told me to see her in her office during break time. I believed that somehow someone had let the cat out of the box, and I kept rehearsing every possible answer to give her. When it turned out to be an open recognition of how you transformed my vague knowledge of computer knowledge into being one of the best in my school, I couldn't help but confess how you taught me all I knew. The principal warned that she was not sending us to participate but to win. Baby, what do you think about the competition? I agree with her completely, Eddie said. Lagos State is competitive, academically and technologically, but Adaeze is unstoppable. Like a wild wind, it is a double challenge for me to help you study and explore new opportunities to improve your knowledge. Whatever it will take, he continued, you have my full support. The next day, after a first day of extra 2 hours of coaching, I returned from school and found a gift box on the dining table. At first, I thought it must be for a friend's birthday party he had not told me about. But on a closer look, I saw my name on it. I gave him an elephant hug and asked what we were celebrating. Open it, he said. I started opening it like one attempting to open a time bomb. I didn't want to tear the beautiful gift wrap, so I took my time to remove the clips and scotch tape. I pulled out the box with the inscription HP Windows 10 laptop, and I almost fainted from excitement.